I'm Stephen Childress, and I've decided to do my Dark Side of Communication project on deception in romantic relationships. I apologize, it looks a little unprofessional. I'm sitting on the ground. This is the biggest screen in my house, and some of the pictures I had in here somehow didn't make it into the format, so I apologize for that. So, in intimate relationships, it shouldn't be surprising that most individuals, about 92%, admit to having lied to a romantic partner at least once. And when you think about it, you might be like, "Wow, that's a lot of people who have lied in relationships." But when you think about it, we lie all the time, basically every day, sometimes without even thinking about it. And a lot, and during those times, it can be referred to as deception. And so, psychology today describes deception as the act, big or small, cruel or kind, of causing someone to believe something that is untrue. And so, why do people use deception? Well, there's a few different types of lies that people use every day. The first kind is lies of commission, where you fabricate a story to protect yourself. So if you broke something from your mom's china set, and she says, "Did you do this?" and you're like, "Oh, it wasn't me. You see, the dog," and you start to fabricate a story to protect yourself. And then the other kind is a lie of omission, where you avoid telling a hard truth to someone to protect them. And so, an example I had on here, I had a picture of Honest Abe in a Geico commercial, and it was an example where he didn't do that so well, where he told the hard truth, where his wife asked him, "Does this dress make my butt look big?" And Honest Abe responds by saying, "Perhaps a little," and she walks away, flustered and upset. And what he could have done was he could have said, "Oh, no, not at all, hon, you look great," and it would have protected her, and it would have preserved the relationship, and so that would have been, if he were to do that, that would be an example of a lie of omission, or benevolent deception, basically a white lie. And it can be seen as compassionate offerings that serve to maintain a relationship, and which would have saved a lot of hurt for Mrs. Lincoln and a lot of embarrassment and probably anger towards President Lincoln. And so a lot of people may ask, well, is deception helpful at all? Is it always helpful? Isn't a lie always a lie? And does deception have any benefits? And so my thesis for this is that benevolent deception, or lies of omission, creates long-term issues in relational intimacy, connectedness, self-disclosure, and causes couples from voicing more pressing issues in the future. So some of the ways that deception affects intimacy. I don't think my computer's plugged in. Give me 1 second. Okay, there we go. So the ways that deception affects intimacy, truth should always be expressed in close relationships. That should go without saying. And the closer the relationship, the more a breach of truth will affect a relationship's further growth towards intimacy and self-disclosure. And so, when you share thoughts and feelings and emotions with courtesy and a healthy atmosphere, it helps build that trust and genuineness. And so a lot of times that intimacy is not best expressed in relationships is if either there's avoided attachment or anxious attachment. So avoided attachment would be a fear of closeness, where you fear intimacy and you try to distance yourself from getting closer to that person than you say you want to. And then anxious attachment would be the paranoia of losing closeness, where you fear losing that intimacy. And so Cole says in his article that individuals uncomfortable with intimacy use deception to keep others at a safe distance, whether that be very close or not so close. And through deception, people attempt to control the amount of personal information they reveal to others. And failing to disclose pertinent information or misleading others allows individuals to manage the boundary between themselves and their relational partners. And so you can see how intimacy will definitely be affected if deception, becomes common practice in that relationship. And deception also affects affection. And so, as expected, deception creates distrust, distance, suspicion, and can even end the relationship altogether, depending on the frequency in which it occurs and the seriousness of the breach of trust and authenticity. And so this would definitely draw into question the seriousness of the deceiver who's in that relationship. Is another person may ask, well, how serious are you taking this if you're going to keep, lying to me? And so women in particular treat lying more seriously than men do, and are more likely to hold on to that breach of trust more than men. And so Averly, Levine, and Kornick say, so not only did women rate lying in general as a less acceptable form of behavior than men, but women are more likely to view the act of lying as significant, regardless of the information or how big the lie was, and are more likely to report negative emotional reactions. But however, just because deception does exist in a relationship doesn't necessarily mean that relationship is totally unhealthy and not growing. And so communication with partners was beneficial to staying in relationships for when Jang, Levine, and Smith studied this. And they said even talking around the deception issue and avoiding the deception issue while still talking to one's partner were related to continuing in the relationship. And so ultimately, deception is about protection of the face, whether it's protecting yourself or protecting others. And so truth is something that every relationship is built upon, romantic or not. But the same truth can also be mishandled or abused in how you use it. When truth is handled respectfully, responsibly, and disclosed in a manner that builds up close relationships, intimacy is gained, and the relationship continues, and vice versa if it's mishandled. And couples should discuss what issues they won't shy away from in speaking truth, and in situations where it may be better to withhold truth from one another. And that depends on obviously if say one of the people in the relationship is communicating with their ex, and the other person asks about it and they lie about it, that's more serious than say like somebody lies about like not liking Mexican food. And so they should be able to take time to discuss those which truths are more important than others, and which ones are just not worth sharing to get along with the other person better. And I'd like to close with this final thought from Whitbourne said that I think sums this all up nicely. And she says, lying doesn't have to detract from your relationship quality. Just make sure it's your partner you're trying to protect from the truth and not yourself. And these are my works cited, and thank you.